Welcome. We were discussing CPU scheduling in our last session. So we have seen first come first serve, FCFS, and SJF, shortest job first CPU scheduling in our previous sessions. In today's session, we'll discuss about priority scheduling. So one of the type of the scheduling, priority scheduling. So with respect to the previous case, SJF algorithm, shortest job first algorithm. In this case, shortest job first algorithm, this is really a special case when we have a general priority scheduling algorithm. So as when processor arrived with their arrival time and their burst time, so we will give the priority based on the arrival time, right? So based on that, we draw this particular SJF Gantt chart. Because however, and coming to the SJF shortest job first, we will trace out the burst time, next process burst time, and accordingly we will draw the Gantt chart. But along with that, we will consider arrival time also. So that is the priority given for that. So by considering that fact in mind, so priority scheduling will give us little more strength to do with that. In general, so each process will be associated with each process is associated with a particular priority number. Is nothing but an integer priority or privilege. So a priority number or integer is associated with each process. That is what the first point says. So this is the heart, this is the main concept behind priority scheduling. So equal priority process, when we have equal priority process in the CPU scheduling, so then FCFS should be applied in the order first come first serve. But so we'll see with an example. So one thing is supposed to remember in this case, CPU is allocated to the process with the highest priority. The smallest integer is equivalent to the highest priority. So that is what it means. The smallest integer, in the sense, say if you say from starting from ascending order, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. So that is the smallest number, is nothing but which is having highest priority. Again, this will have preemptive and non-preemptive. Preemptive in the sense it may go along with the. So here the CPU is allocated to the process with the highest priority. That is highest priority in the sense which is having the smallest integer in their process queue. Okay, and then again we have a preemptive and non-preemptive. Preemptive and non-preemptive, whether the particular process can be whether it will release the CPU in between the execution or no. So based on that, again we will draw it. And SJF is a priority scheduling where priority is the inverse of predicted next CPU burst time. So this is what we did in the previous exercise while discussing with the previous example, right? So here problem scheduling can be either preemptive or non-preemptive. So when a process arrives at the ready queue, its priority is compared with the priority of the currently running process. So this is with respect to this particular point now. So when the low priority process is running, when the highest priority process has arrived just in between, then the lower priority process may stop its execution by giving a chance for the highest priority in the queue. So a preemptive priority scheduling algorithm, it will preempt the CPU if the priority of the newly arrived process, which is higher than the priority of the currently running process. That is what we discussed now. And so when it is non-preemptive, it simply put the new process at the head of the ready queue as usual in the queue. But over here, with the problem is indefinite blocking. So indefinite blocking leads to the starvation because low priority processes may never execute. So this is one of the problem. For example, whenever a process is under execution, under CPU scheduling, when scheduled, so at that time, whenever high priority uh, processes has been arrived, automatically the chance given for high priority. Again, during the execution, again another high priority, and so on. The chain may continue. So that is the starvation. Starvation. On the other hand, the low priority process may never execute. That is one of the problem may arise with respect to this priority scheduling. So the solution is supposed to give a time. So that is aging. So as time progresses, increase the priority of the process. Based on the time, is supposed to increase the priority of the process. We'll see the example now. So here is a queue. Process P1, P2, P3, P4 and P5. So these are their burst time respectively. P1 with the 10, P2 equal to 1, P3 the 2, P4 with the 1, P5 with the 5. And priority 3, 1, 4, 5, 2. This is as per according to their priority. So this is how the priority has been given. So now while drawing this particular Gantt chart, please follow my cursor. While drawing this particular Gantt chart, we are supposed to refer to this particular priority. First, think about the whether two processes is having same priority level. If there is same priority level, then we are supposed to apply FCFS on this particular process. So according to that statement, in this particular example, we don't have the two or more processes with the same priority level. So then we don't have that particular headache. We'll just start with the drawing. First consider based on priority value. So according to the statement, the priority is decided based on the least number, least integer. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1 with the value, that is P2. Okay. So P2 will be started initially. P2 will be given chance with the CPU. After that, second priority with P5. So P5 0 to 1, because it is bus time is having only 1, so that's why 0 to 1, that is P2. And coming to the P5, that is priority with respect to priority, that is 2, the bus time is 5, so over here starts from 1 from here till here, that is 6, that is because it is having a bus time 5. Then moving to the P1 3 with the priority 3, so that is bus time is 10, 6 plus 10. And then coming to the P3 with the priority that is 4, P3 16 to 18, and at last P4 that is 5 with the priority 5. That is how you're supposed to draw the Gantt chart. So understood? So first we supposed to decide based on the priority. Based on the priority, we supposed to allocate this Gantt chart, allocate in this Gantt chart. We give you the CPU for its execution, and then we may start with the compare with the bus time, and then we supposed to put it. If we have two or more processes or two processes with the same priority, then we supposed to apply on those two first come first serve according to the entry in the queue. And one of the problem with respect to this is the lowest priority processes may supposed to wait. They may not execute sometimes. So that is with respect to that, we supposed to give with the time. During the execution time, whether it is continued, automatically supposed to update with that. So that is a solution for that. So then we can calculate average waiting time, that is P1, P2, P1 plus P2 plus P3 plus P4 plus P5 divided by 5. So P1's the waiting time is 6 plus P2's waiting time is 0. P3's waiting time is 16, and so on, divided by 5. We'll get it 8.2. So that is priority scheduling. So any clarification on this? One more thing under this is, if there is an indefinite blockage of low priority processes, we can gradually increase the priority of processes that wait based on the waiting period in the system for a long time. So that is one of the solution we may have under this. Moving further, round robin scheduling. So in this case, each process gets a small unit of CPU time, say time quantum, depicted as Q, usually 10 to 100 milliseconds. After this time has elapsed, the process is preempted and added to the end of the ready queue. This is the round robin scheduling algorithm is designed in such a way that it will well suited with the time sharing systems. It is similar to FCFS, but the preemption is added to switch between the processes. Preemption is added between switch uh, to switch between the processes. So now each process gets a small unit of CPU time, say time quantum between 10 to 100. So when that particular time period is lapsed, the process is automatically preempted and added to the end of the ready queue. Okay. So the ready queue is treated as something like a circular queue. Ready queue is nothing but circular queue. The CPU scheduler goes around and around with the ready queue, allocating the CPU to each process for a time interval up to one time quantum. That is how each process has been selected by the CPU scheduler. So now how to implement this one? We are supposed to have a FIFO. So if there are n processes in the ready queue and the time quantum is q, then each process gets 1 by n of the CPU time in chunks of at most q time unit at once. So no process waits more than n minus 1 q time units. This is the idea behind round robin scheduling. So each time supposed to each process will get its CPU turn, so that along with its time quantum. So once that time is over, automatically the process is preempted, halted, and it will be directly added to the end of the ready queue. So here ready queue is nothing but is in the form of circular queue. We will follow FCFS only, first come first serve only. But only thing is we are supposed to compare with the time quantum. That is one of the idea behind this. Okay. So timer interrupts every quantum to schedule next process. Timer interrupts every quantum to schedule next process. So the performance is based on the size of the queue. If this queue is too large, the circular queue or the ready queue is too large, then we apply FIFO, first in first out, nothing but first come first serve. And if the queue is small, then queue must be the large with respect to context switch, otherwise overhead is too high. So that is the strength of that. So we'll see an example. Over here, you can see process P1, P2, P3 with the bus time 24, 3, and 3. So now this is a ready queue. Ready queue in the sense is nothing but a circular queue now, because we are supposed to switch based on the time quantum. So time quantum given is 4. So according to that, so however, each process is served based on FCFS only. So automatically P1 gets entry. So P1 is entered. So bus time is 24, but each process is given a chance up to quantum of 4 for each 4 milliseconds. So now what happens is P1 is entered till 0 to 4, it will get the CPU for its execution. After that, move to the P2. So P2 gets its chance, but P2 is having the bus time 3. So now still we have a time quantum 4, automatically it will consume only 3, then allocated to the next process, that is P3. P3 is again having the bus time 3, that is over here, then it is allocated to P1. So that is how P1 to P2 after 4 milliseconds. So then, but is supposed to consider bus time also together. Then from P2 to P3, and then from P3 to P1, and so on. So now in this case, what happens? Initially P1 will be allocated with the CPU. P1 is having the time quantum 4 initially, so that is done over here. Then it is moved to the P2. P2 is having the burst time 3, so till 4 plus 3 till 7 over here. Then it is shifted to P3. Then it's moved to the P1 again. P1 is, so initially we done with the 4, then the remaining part P1. So each time is supposed to slice P1 with the 4 quantum milliseconds, and so that is the result. So now what happens is higher average turnaround than SJF. The turnaround is very high, but the response is better when compared with SJF. So when we have this context switch, the Q should be large compared to the context switch time. Coming to the time, okay. So Q usually 10 milliseconds to 100 milliseconds. Context switch is less than 10 microseconds. So here you can observe the difference. Say consider process time, that is the 10 over here, quantum 12, context switch, that is 0. So in this case, in this case, one second, I forgot to specify with respect to this previous setup. So now, if, however, you may say, however, P1 is having the burst time 24, and once we done with P2 and P3, why we can't allocate 24 itself all together, the remaining 20? So because 4 is already completed, 4 intervals, 4 milliseconds of time of CPU. After that, P2 and P3 has taken the CPU for its execution. So once it is done, the remaining is P1 with the 20 milliseconds. So now, however, only one process remaining in the queue, we can give this one. But according to the criteria round robin scheduling, so we supposed to give based on the quantum only. So that's why it's supposed to divide this CPU for every 4 milliseconds, because whenever there is a chance of a new process is arriving on the queue, then with their less burst time, automatically it gets chance for its execution, CPU execution. Okay, so in this case, so no process is allocated to the CPU no more than one time quantum in a row. So initially one time quantum can be given for all. So if your process the CPU burst exceeds one time quantum, the process is preempted and is put back to the ready queue. So that is what we did over here, P1 to P1 to P2, P2 to P3, then again P1, and so on. The same thing repeated. So now in this case, what happens? Process P2 does not need 4 milliseconds. However, it is, as we know, as the quantum is 4, but it quits before its time quantum expires because it is having the burst time only 3 with the value 3. The CPU is given to the next process. So that is process P3. Again, for process P3 is having its burst time is 3. Still, it is having time quantum 4. It will expire and move to the P1 process. So the average waiting time is, what will be the average waiting time now? 17, 0 plus 4 plus 7. How? P1 is 0, P2 with the 7, P3 equal to, yes, 17 divided by 3, that is 5.66 milliseconds. So in this case, no process is allocated the CPU more than one time quantum in a row. So if there are n processes in the ready queue, the time quantum is q, then each process gets 1 by n. So that is what we have seen over here. If there are n processes in the ready queue and the time quantum is q, then each process gets 1 by n of the 1 by nth time of the CPU time in chunks of at most q time units at once. That is what we did over here. We divided this entire CPU time, right? So that is how round robin scheduling works. So any clarification on this one? Moving to the multi-level queue scheduling. This is another class of scheduling algorithm. So this is created based on if such a situation has appeared in which processes are easily classified into different groups. For example, we can say a common division between foreground and background. That is, in foreground in the sense interactive to the users, say UI. So if it is a background, so background, that is nothing but batch processing we may apply. So in this scenario, so we can have a two separate queues if it is possible to divide. One is foreground and another one is background. So in this case, what happens is these two types of processes have different response time requirements, and it may have different scheduling needs also. In general, foreground processes may have priority. So priority can be clearly defined rather than the background processes. So here, with respect to multi-level queue scheduling algorithm, it partitions the ready queue into several separate queues. Over here, consider this example is diagram, highest priority. So we can divide the number of processes based on its priority and based on the different criteria. We can divide as the system processes, we can divide as interactive processes, we can divide as interactive editing processes, we can divide as batch process and other student processes. And for each division, we may allocate the priority as well. With the highest priority, we'll get the chance at first and next and so on. So highest priority will be in the top in the ready queue. So in this case, so there must be scheduling among the queues as well. So now scheduling has to be maintained. So which is commonly implemented using fixed priority preemptive scheduling. For example, the foreground queue may be having absolute priority over the background. So the order in which we apply, so that is order in which we apply based on the priority. So over here we can go with like this in this particular order: system processes, interactive process, and interactive editing process, batch process, and so on. So each queue has absolute priority over lower priority queue. No process in the batch queue could run unless the queues are for system processes. So each time each process is executing gets its CPU turn for its execution in their own priority level. So that is how multi-level queue scheduling works. So moving further, as we know, the ready queue can be partitioned into separate queues, for example, either foreground or background. So once we divide this one, once we partition this one, the process permanently in a given queue only. It won't jump from here and there. Each queue has its own scheduling algorithm. So we can have for foreground, we can apply round robin. For background, we can apply FCFS. So based on the usage, its own process scheduling algorithms. And scheduling must be done between the queues in such a way that fixed priority scheduling, you can't change. So say for example, in this case, if you apply round robin, the same scheduling algorithm is supposed to use throughout. You can't change it. Serve all from foreground, then from background possibility for then from background. That means, so initially, however, as we know, we may go with initially we'll start with the foreground. So we will complete all the executions, providing CPU for each individual processes. Then the execution for the processes from background may start. So that's why over here background process may supposed to wait for a long period. So it may be possible into the possibility of starvation for these particular processes. So now we can have a time slice also for each of the queues. Time slice, that is, each queue gets a certain amount of CPU time which it can schedule among its processes. In general, 80% of queue time may be given to the foreground, 20% to the FCFS, that is in the background, So this is the possibility behind this multi-level queue. So when we say multi-level queue, we are dividing queue into various partitions. Each partition should have its own scheduling algorithm. So to maintain its priority, usually with the fixed priority, scheduling supposed to be allocated with respect to each of the queues. And then with respect to this, as an example, foreground and background. So foreground will take its CPUs initially, then it will allocate to the background. Okay, so we have seen how we can divide the number of processes under these different categories. So by providing highest priority. So here system processes will get its CPU initially, then interactive, then editing process, and so on. So coming to the feedback queue is another representation, another scheduling algorithm, multi-level feedback queue. In this case, the multi-level queue scheduling algorithm is used, but processes are permanently assigned to a queue. That is in the previous case. But over here, it can allow a process to move between queues. Over here, why we supposed to allocate like this? A process can move between various queues. That is, aging can be implemented this way. On the other hand, if some of the processes may supposed to wait for a longer period because of the priority, so then there is a chance of starvation. To avoid that particular part, we can allow the process to move between various queues so that the aging can be implemented. Okay, so now multi-level feedback queue scheduler define the following parameters: number of queues, total number of queues. As we know, with respect to the previous multi-level queue, this is the number of queues that we have: system process, interactive editing process, batch process, student process. The number of queues. Then scheduling algorithms for each queue, we may allocate that: round robin, FCFS, SGF, all those. And method used to determine when to upgrade a process. So this is the major factor behind this multi-level feedback queue. Method used to determine when to upgrade a process, whether a particular process can be upgraded between one queue to another. That is what technique we may use, and when we can demote it from the highest priority queue to the lowest priority queue. And then method used to determine which queue a process will enter when that process needs a service. So these are the major parameters behind this multi-level feedback queue. Okay, so we'll see an example. Consider a multi-level feedback queue scheduler with three queues. We have three queues: Q0, Q1, Q2, Q0, Q1, Q2. So for Q1, we are given with round robin. When we say round robin, we are supposed to allocate with time quantum. So over here, time quantum is 8 milliseconds. Again, we have Q1. With the Q1, we are giving round robin scheduling algorithm by the time quantum 16 milliseconds. So we have another queue, that is FCFS, first come first serve. So consider we have these three queues. These three queues now. So now to apply scheduling. So initially a new job enters Q0, which is served for FCFS. So now when it gains a CPU, job receives 8 milliseconds because we have already given quantum, that is time quantum, that is 8 milliseconds in Q0. So because Q0 is implemented with RR. If it doesn't finish 8 milliseconds, job is moved to Q1 over here. At Q1, job is again served FCFS and receives 16 additional milliseconds to execute. If it doesn't complete, it is preempted and moved to Q2 and so on. So we'll see the setup here. This is what we discussed. So initially, one particular process enters into the initial queue. Initial queue is, that is Q0. This one RR. Q0 is given with the round robin scheduling with time quantum 8 milliseconds. That is what we represent here. So initially the process enters this one Q0 with the time quantum 8. So it will consume the CPU for 8 milliseconds. Then move to the next queue. Next, whenever it enters the next queue, automatically the given it will get the chance as FCFS. So it will take its time of 16 milliseconds at time quantum is 16 as round robin. Then it will move out, then move to the next queue, that is Q2. So Q2 with respect to that, first come first serve, again it will execute. That is how multi-level feedback queue works. So in this case, the scheduling algorithm gives highest priority to any process with a CPU burst of 8 milliseconds or less, so that it will get the process immediately. You get the CPU immediately and completes its CPU burst and go off to the next IO burst and so on. So in general, if you summarize, so we may need with these many parameters for multi-level feedback queue. So number of queues we should be well known, and scheduling algorithms for each queue, and method used to determine when to upgrade and when to demote. So this is based on the time quantum and rotation. So method used to determine which queue a process will enter when that process needs service. That is FCFS we followed over here. So any clarification, any doubt on this? Moving further, thread scheduling. In this case, it is something different than, or this clear-cut differentiation between user level and kernel level thread. So when threads supported and scheduled but not processes, that is what thread scheduling is. So it is clearly differentiated between user level and kernel level threads. So when threads are supported, threads scheduled but not processes. So many to one and many to many thread library schedules user level threads to run on the process contention scope. So here we have seen 2 or 3 different criteria or models under threads: one-to-one, many-to-one, and many-to-many models. So the scheduling can take place between these thread libraries. So we have seen different kinds of thread libraries in our previous session as well. POSIX library, Windows 32, and next libraries. So based on this, the library scheduling can occur. When compared with the previous different CPU scheduling algorithms, so this thread scheduling algorithm is given chance with the CPU via using process contention scope, because when there is a competition between different scheduling, it is between the process. So how to identify this one? Again, via by the priority which is set by the programmer. Priority set by the programmer. So kernel thread scheduled onto available CPU via system contention scope. So we have 2 types, one is process and another one is system contention scope. So process contention scope is based on the process, and system contention scope is based on the kernel thread among all the threads in the system. And coming to the pthread scheduling, so the APIs allow specifying either PCS or SCS during thread creation itself. So we'll make use of this system call pthread underscore scope underscore process, which will schedule the threads using PCS scheduling. PCS scheduling is nothing but process contention scope scheduling, that is within the process. The second one is system, based on the SCS, system contention scope. It can be limited to by the OS, controlled by the OS. Linux and Mac OS, it will allow only the system based system contention scope scheduling algorithm. So this is a small code snippet for a pthread scheduling API. If you observe over here, if you trace out line by line, if you compare, so starting with the pthread.h, we have all those available functionalities, which is available under pthread, wherever we used to create the processes, that is available in pthread.h. So using that, we are creating number of threads. Number of thread will be given with the thread ID, and along with that, default attributes supposed to set up. And then for each available threads, we supposed to set the scheduling algorithm to process or system. So any one thing we supposed to adopt. So that is via the scope. The scope can be called using pthread attr, that is attribute, and set scope. Set scope is nothing but either SCS or PCS. So that is what we define over here, pthread scope system. And then the scheduling policy, either FIFO, first in first out, and or other. Then again scheduling policy is supposed to be set. Scheduling policy. After that, it's supposed to create the threads. Based on these particular policies, threads are created. Once threads are created, it should get the it should get the CPU for its execution scheduling. So now each time now supposed to join to the each thread using pthread join. So each thread will begin control on this functionality only. That is via setting up the parameter. We saw the different parameters for each of the threads, right? So that is how a small code snippet works for a pthread scheduling. So any clarification on this one, please get back. So that is the different CPU scheduling algorithm for you. So we'll continue in the next session. Okay. Thank you.